You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nicole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.
Oh, yeah. Good morning, everybody. It's Wednesday. That's right. It's Hump Day, October 5th. And today is National Rhode Island Day, National Get Funky Day, World Teachers Day, National Apple Betty Day. I have no clue what the hell an Apple Betty is. And National Do Something Day. Thank you for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us, especially on YouTube and as well as all other social media platforms. We're live every Monday through Friday on YouTube and audio only on Clubhouse. And if you are joining us on Clubhouse, you can also participate in the show by raising your hand if you have a brief comment on the story most recently presented. But without further ado, let's pay a quick bill so we can get right back to the news.
At True Classic OG, we live by one motto: stay true. We stay true to our legacy cut of True OG that's always fresh, piney, gassy, and delicious. We represent the spirit, hustle, and diversity of our great city of Angels. And we stay true to the spirit of this plant, doing everything in-house to ensure that you get the highest quality and consistency with every batch. And that's what's made us LA's favorite OG. True Classic OG. Stay true, Los Angeles.
Oh, yeah, that is right. Today, he is back with us. That's right. The dope dad himself, Rico Lamitte. You can often find him changing diapers and chasing kids around parks. When he's not doing all of that, you can also find him making shapes with shells. He also does a lot of those things with grown-ass adults at TEDx conventions, babysitting them in the daycare section. But he's back with us today, and we're glad to have him back because you know what? He was recently injured yesterday where he hurt his Achilles tendon because of all the backpedaling that he does on safe banking. He actually got actual physical injury. So shout out, and hopefully maybe he can get Medi-Cal for all to take care of all of his health needs. But nonetheless, it is none other than the dope dad himself, injured and on the scene, Rico Lamitte.
Oh, yeah. It's great to be back, folks. But although, unfortunately, I can't promise I won't miss another day or two if I end up having to get surgery. And I'm so glad that Jason's intro mentioned my stance on being against the original Safe Banking Act, not Safe Banking Plus, because my headline today by Kyle Yeager from MJ Moment is House Republican Group releases agenda opposing legalization of marijuana, linking it to suicide and violence. The 156-member Republican Study Committee, RSC, released a family policy agenda expressing opposition to federal cannabis legalization and falsely linked consumption to suicide and violence. The major GOP caucus counts nearly 3 out of 4 House Republican lawmakers as members. Per the article, the RSC's agenda details 10 ideological principles and more than 80 legislative recommendations to guide conservatives' work to restore the American family. A section titled Protecting Children from Dangers of Drugs says cannabis remains federally prohibited, but that has not stopped more and more states and localities from legalizing it under their own laws. This has led to an explosion of marijuana amongst children, which is having a hugely negative impact on their health. Congress should not legalize marijuana while also taking steps to constrain this new industry's ability to harm children. The report mislabels research data originally showing underage cannabis use declining or remaining stable following implementation of legalization before the harmful rhetoric continues. At the very least, Congress should direct the CDC to gather data and conduct studies on the health impacts of THC use during childhood and early adolescence, with a special focus on deaths by suicide in those involved in violent crimes, to provide Congress and the public with further information about these dangers. The agenda also calls for the passage of a bill to increase criminal penalties for manufacturing or selling Schedule I drugs like cannabis in the form of candy or beverages if there is any reasonable cause to believe that they are sold to minors. Quote. The committee agenda did face pushback from within its own ranks. Staff from a whole 2 of its members, there's 156 total, 2 of them pushed back, and they reached out to MJ Moment openly saying that their homeboys ain't with the shits, and they disagree with the prohibitionist rhetoric. Well, folks, this is what happens when you cherry pick data and build straw man arguments around correlation over causation. Bullshit straw man arguments certain people were making, claiming the absence of safe banking, not safe banking plus, is why people are being killed, is how we end up with crazy ass, hyperbolic, reefer madness bullshit agendas pushed out by lawmakers just like this. This is Rico Lamitte, dopest dad on the street for High at 9 News. And I'd love to hear the conservatives in the room try and spin their way out of this one.
Well, Rico, I can easily spin this.
Hold on, wait. What's an apple
Gretchen.
crisp first? Hold on. We need to know what an apple crisp is. Gretchen, go.
An apple crisp is baked apples with
Or apple, no, an apple crisp. Apple Betty.
Apple
Betty
Betty.
is like an apple crisp, and basically you take baked apples and you have a crumble topping on it. It's like
Didn't Too Short make a song about Apple Betty?
No, that was apple bottoms, bro.
Anyways, now, Gretchen, I do want to know your opinion on this story. I just had to know what an apple Betty was personally, and I knew you'd be the woman for the answer on that one.
Yes, I love apple Betties. And I am not hating on this policy. Know why? Because if you want to combat what the Republicans are doing, you need to endorse this. What this legislation is doing, that they are pushing, is saying that candies should not be marketed to children. And if this industry wants to come out and prove that they are about the kids and making sure we are completely upright and yada yada, we need to also support that we're not going to make candies and sell drugs to kids. What's wrong?
Gretchen, it does not get messaged like that, and you know that. When the Republicans
Well,
come out, when they come out with their
I have a bigger question. I have a bigger question at hand.
Is they're going to be filling up your Halloween candy bags full of marijuanas.
That's never happened.
More people are worried about fentanyl now for Halloween. I'm not that worried about cannabis this year.
Yeah, people should worry about fentanyl.
We shall see.
Right.
He said that last year. We said that the year before. And what happened? It's the Republicans and the cops.
Little rainbow.
They're the only ones.
We'll be fine.
I have a razor blades that we've gotten in our candy over the years.
Syringes that I've had.
None of that actually was happening. This fucking scaremongering bullshit.
I mean, that's what they do best. That is what they do best. I have a question about this.
By they, who do you mean, Jason? Who's the they?
All right, so the thing is, yes,
boys.
I agree with that cannabis products shouldn't be marketed to children, and I'll go further to say I don't believe that any cannabis product is marketed to children because children can't even access these places to buy the products in the first place.
Marketing doesn't have to be at the place of sale, Jason.
But marketing is all about getting sales.
That's like saying
marketing is all about getting sales. That's why people
like,
market is to get sales.
I understand that. We're having a conversation about marketing, right? We're talking about demographic targeting on things that are not in the retail. Coca-Cola doesn't spend their marketing dollars at fucking 7-Eleven, but everyone goes there to buy Coca-Cola. They're putting it on billboards and on top of gas pumps and that kind of thing. And we have billboards. We have a bunch of shit that like, I would go so far as to say like, I hate to always bring this up, but like the way that Cookies has marketed a ton of their shit makes us look bad, makes the industry look bad in my opinion.
So blame it on Cookies is what you're saying.
I mean, not just Cookies, but brands that fall in line with that idea. I mean, there's a bag of weed that's got a bowl of cereal with alphabets.
That's Cookies.
On a bag of
weed. That's Cookies weed. It's called cereal milk.
I know.
Okay. Let me bring some facts to this conversation here.
Cereal shouldn't be marketed to kids anyways because it's all fucking sugar. Period.
Hold on. First of all, cereal is not just for kids.
Let Gretchen tell something important.
Here's what the actual legislation that they're pushing says, not the summary in this bullshit document that they put out. Knowing or having reasonable cause to believe that the controlled substance will be distributed, dispensed, or sold to a person under 18 years of age.
That's like, nobody knows that. No, like,
yes, they do. If you're selling shit in a dispensary, it's not going to a person under 18 years of age.
Exactly right, Gretchen. That's exactly my point. There's no way we're selling weed to minors.
I truly believe. But this is what I believe. I believe that this piece of legislation, if you read the bill, like the technical bill, I think the way that it is worded is for them to be able to speak to their base and say, "Oh, we're protecting the kids." Meanwhile, no one's really gonna fucking get in trouble for this. This is not what it's about. It's a way for Republicans to look good a couple weeks out from an election. And if you look at the Senate version of this bill, it was introduced back in 2017 and went nowhere past its introduction. This is all smoke and mirrors. It ain't gonna do anything. I'm not worried about this whatsoever.
Roz has a comment in Clubhouse. Go ahead, Roz.
Yeah, I would just say there is something to some of the packaging of edibles and how it's being packaged. Not that you're going to have individuals or kids walk into a dispensary per se, but when you get it home, and also if you as a parent, hopefully you're responsible, but there are some parents that may not. And if the packaging has a spaceman with an astronaut with a hat on, and it's called Space Gummies, and it's all cartoonish, there is something to be said about how it's presented and how that could be actually placed out there where kids could pop. I agree with Gretchen that the way that it's being put together, I think it's just really just a political play. But I think our industry has to be responsible when it comes to how we're presenting this and making sure it's not presented for a kid to want to tap into it.
That's all I was saying is like taking responsibility ourselves in a big way. You know what I mean? Like we understand what's coming at us. And so when we're having the conversation and we're buying products from people as vendors of these products, as retailers, even if you just mention it to the people that are selling these products to you, like, hey, why are you putting a fucking cartoon on this? Just say it. Keep voicing it, keep saying it, because it's up to us to make sure that we're holding the industry accountable. And for those of us who see that and realize that you're right, Rico, cereal should not be being marketed to kids, but it is. An alphabet cereal looks like, it's like, hey, look at kids, look at me, look at this. I think that we should take responsibility and say, hey, bro, I'm not going to, or lady or whoever, I'm not going to sell products that I feel look like they're appealing to children.
You know who I blame for all this? You know who I blame for all of this?
I blame you for everything, but
you know who I blame for all of this, I blame Toys R Us, because Toys R Us told me to never grow up and always be a Toys R Us kid. So therefore, it's not marketing to children, it's marketing to grown-ass children.
Yeah.
Well, that's a perfect segue to right into you, Jason Beck, the guy that, Peter Pan for life, refuses to ever grow up. Stay a Toys R Us kid for the rest of your life, Mr. Beck.
Yeah, that's
also known as the highest Republican, the member of any political party that might piss you off, and the longest running retailer in the history of cannabis in the whole galaxy, I think. I mean, I don't know if they're selling weed in Mars, but if they
sell
are,
weed in Mars.
All right, let's do this.
Yes,
Jason, what do you have for us?
Space weed. Oh, yeah. Thank you so much, Nicole. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Today, my story comes out of New York, and I think it's a bunch of propaganda, but nonetheless, because they say local farmers are ready to supply the legal market in New York. As New York State inches closer to legal marijuana markets, NBC 10 News is getting a closer look at the emerging business of farming the plants. The first crop of the first adult use sales in New York is being harvested now, and a number of local farms have been approved by New York State as growers. In a quote, "It's amazing to see what our farmers in the Rochester community can do when they're given the opportunity to," said Damian Foggin, the chief equity officer at the New York State Office of Cannabis Management, while standing at a farm in the Rochester area on Monday. Most of the 261 family farms licensed to grow have farmed other crops for decades and continue to do so. What we found is that it is impossible to build a market that's focused on small and medium-sized businesses, that's focused on family businesses getting an opportunity to be a part of this industry that has the potential to bring so much life to New York, says Chris Alexander, the executive director of the New York State Office of Cannabis Management. There is no doubt that legal marijuana market can be a controversial topic, Assemblyman Josh Jensen said to The Farm on Monday, and says he's heard comments from many of his constituents on both sides of the debate. In a quote, he says, "We have a unique opportunity to make it the best industry it can be, and we're only going to be doing that and moving forward if we actually talk to the people who are farming it, people who are processing it, and the end users as well as people who have some concerns on this new type of industry," he says. The first licenses for legal cannabis dispensaries will go to people who have been arrested for marijuana offenses in New York State in the past and have run a profitable business for at least 2 years since. Those folks will have access to storefronts that are currently being scouted and secured and will be built into retail spaces in the New York State Dormitory Authority. Right now, our operators have at the Dormitory Authority are running around the state, locking up locations so they can be built out and designated for operations to step into them before the end of the year, Alexander says. The Office of Cannabis Management plans to hand out 9 of those licenses in the Finger Lakes region during the first round. Well, I'll tell you this, okay? I think this is a total fucking puff piece. First of all, if they're harvesting the weed now and they're not even going to be ready to open until the end of the year, all that weed is going to be dried out and not able to even actually be sold. You're going to have to give it all away. And secondly, New York, you're never going to clean up your trap market problem to actually inhabit a regulated market space and actually have it be successful. And this is Jason Beck reporting for High at 9 News.
Did anybody catch the video? There's I want to say, I think I caught it. I think it was on CNN. I'm not sure, but there's a video of the first harvest, the product drying. And then the guy that is running the facility, explaining like how much extra time they're going to take on this harvest and blah, blah, blah. And they do a close up on the weed. And I was like, oh, fuck. Like,
boof, huh?
It is so bad.
So boof.
So bad.
God.
I'm sorry, guy, that, put your weed out on the news, but like,
so
holy
boof.
shit, it was really bad.
It's craft cannabis.
It's
Whatever
crap
the fuck that
cannabis,
means.
Rico.
Yeah,
Crap.
whatever the fuck that
CRAP. Okay.
So
Marketing.
Jason, what's the this article in a nutshell? We know that farmers, the local farmers, because remember the hemp farmers who were already licensed as hemp farmers in New York were grandfathered in to become cultivators.
Yep.
And I think that can be problematic in itself, because not every hemp farmer is prepared to be able to farm cannabis from a cultivation and from a retail perspective. So what's the kind of like your opinion, the focus of this article, and what should we be thinking about?
It's nothing more than a puff piece of them trying to hype up the New York farmers and like, hey, we've created this amazing market, but really you haven't, because by the time that weed is done, it's let's just say, because I'm willing to put money that there is absolutely 0 stores that are open ready to sell weed before the end of the year. Well, let's just say
there's stores that already exist right now.
The stores, I'm talking about new ones, because this article is referencing that they're going to have all these new social equity stores online, and there's going to be tons of places for people to buy it. And so therefore they have a successful program. But I'm willing to put money on the fact that none of these social equity stores are open by the end of this year. 0, none of them.
Oh yeah, I can agree with that.
Like,
But you're looking at the volume of what's actually being produced right now versus like what can be distributed out of the stores that already do exist. I think that, first of all, the hemp farmers look like they're growing fucking hemp, realistically. Like, and you can't blame them, because that's what they've been doing. Right. That's what they've been doing. And it is the same plant. You know what I mean? Real talk. It's the same fucking plant. But the things that you have to do to get the level of quality that people will consider it cannabis, right? The things you have to do are much different than hemp. And I don't think they're doing that. But I don't necessarily think this is a puff piece so much, Jason, as it is kind of opening up the reality of the need to expedite some things in New York. And I think that we need to keep talking about, like, hey, you guys kind of rolled this out in a fucked up way. You need to go faster on this part. Like, they just were like, oh, here, farmers, start growing weed. You got a bunch of weed. All these farmers invested in all this stuff. I think that we need to push a little harder to get the expeditious fashion pushed on the retails that need to open, so there's a place for these farmers to go, because New York basically set them up for fucking failure.
Fuck yeah, they did set them up for failure, and they're going to continue to do so.
Jason, I have a quick question for you. Are you suggesting that cannabis has 0 shelf life?
It has a very short shelf life, yes, because it's a constantly deteriorating agricultural commodity.
And one of the things about most states COA testing lasts for 1 year. So the moment that they test it for market, it's technically legal only for 365 days from the day it passes COA in almost every regulated state. So once you get past that COA date, like even if it like still would be, like I would still smoke the shit, you know what I mean? But like according to the law, we can't. And so
right, but I'm simply Jason's making it sound as if cannabis harvested this fall is going to be bad by December.
It is. It is.
The weed that they're growing is not being cared for in the way.
It'll be trash. It'll be trash. It'll probably give you a rash on your throat if you smoke it.
No, and I think that there is some value to the fact that there is humidity in New York, because if that were the case, if we were in like, let's say Colorado, I would 1,000% agree, just because it's going to be fucking dust ass dry. But there is some humidity in New York, which is valuable, not only for the plants, but also for the product when it's finished, for it to not just turn into fucking dust in an expeditious fashion, for it to not just be like dust tomorrow.
I have a real New York market question. Serious New York market question for you guys.
No, it's not. It's not fucking serious. If Jason says it's serious, it's not.
So first of all, New York. Okay. First of all, New Yorkers love California cannabis, and New Yorkers love California indoor cannabis based off of the trap market. Not to mention they love outdoor cannabis. But who in the fuck is going to smoke outdoor weed from New York?
It's a valid question. Did you see the thing? Did you see the thing where Kyle?
Mandy says not me. Mandy says not me.
Not me neither.
Also, for the record, I'm with Jason. Weed gets really old really fast, and I don't care like how long the COA lasts. 3-4 months, it's done.
Exactly.
For the freshness, for the quality, you're not wrong. But you're looking at it from a connoisseur market thought. You guys are connoisseurs. You're less than 15% of the market. Just don't forget, you are not the market that you're marketing to.
I agree with that. I agree with that. So basically,
people are smoking fucking 2-year-old weed all day right now. That's just getting tested for the first time. That was harvested in fucking 2020. Like I said,
oregano. So basically, all the weed in New York is all just going to be nothing more than ready to roll packs, because it's all going to be dried shape by that point in time.
Did you see the video that Kyle Kazan, when he went to the dispensaries in New York, he was like, "How did all of this glasshouse weed get here?
Appear on our shelf?"
That was the most cop-ass interview interaction I've ever seen. He's like, "These are mine, but I don't know how they got here." I'm like, "Shut the fuck up."
What'd you think about that, Mandy?
Not my bag, baby.
It hurt my feelings and my ears to listen to it. It was just so over the top.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Shall we keep it moving, y'all?
Yeah, let's keep it moving, bro. I'm done. My throat hurts from talking about all this New York booth weed.
That's not. Are you sure that's the root cause? Anyways,
100% it is. There's some pollen down there.
It's not. Are you sure it's not a glizzy?
Definitely never a glizzy, bro. Never a glizzy.
Get glizzy stuck in your throat. Let's go.
This agriculture and efficiency expert did time in a Colorado cell, learning the hard lessons our industry needs to collectively and emerged as a superhero known to fellow inmates as Jail Google. Was it Google Jail? Jail Google, dedicating her life to paying that knowledge forward so you never end up in the same fucking place. Coming to the stage next, the self-described general data bitch herself, Nicole West. What you got for us?
Good morning, everybody. Today I'm reporting from Santa Rosa. I'm on my way into Hall of Flowers. I'm pretty excited about that. But I did want to give a couple updates to some headlines that I've covered recently. Morocco just launched 10 licenses. I know we've been following the Morocco legalization. They did just officially roll out 10 cannabis licenses. And then also Amsterdam, they went to vote yesterday, and the mayor or the council voted to not outlaw use of cannabis for tourists, so we can still go to Amsterdam. So I just wanted to follow up on everybody with those stories. And I know it's something that continues to happen in the news every fucking few cycles with Amsterdam, but I think we should keep following it and see what happens and when they actually finally start to regulate it. But my headline today is actually coming out of Marijuana Moment, and it's in regard to Colombian lawmakers that approved marijuana legalization bill in committee as the president pushes for global drug policy reform, which, I mean, let's fucking go. So as Colombia's recently inaugurated president steps up from the push for global global drug policy reform, lawmakers approve a bill to legalize a regulated marijuana nationwide on Tuesday, advancing it through the committee with nearly a unanimous vote. The legislation from Liberal Rep. Carlos Ardila and one of the other lawmakers cleared the Chamber of Representatives' first committee with a 31-2 vote, which is amazing. The proposal would create regulations and establish a tax structure for legal cannabis sales. Revenue would be distributed along local municipalities to support public health, education, and agricultural activities. Ardila said that the first step must be taken because the political prohibition is consigned locally, according to the translation of a report for RCN Radio. A description of the purpose in the proposal of the states said that it would regulate the use of cannabis for people of legal age, thus guaranteeing the fundamental right to the free development of the personality. It would also promote a different approach from those used one up to now to fight against the harmful effects on health and society that the psychoactive substance may have, changing purely criminal approach from one of harm reduction and public health, which is the absolute way that cannabis should be treated. Likewise, with this legislative act, strategies that benefit the countryside will be promoted and others will be implemented to combat the illegal traffic of this substance, betting on public health and social growth, the translated description says. The bill is one of at least 2 marijuana legalization efforts and measures to advance the legislature in recent weeks, with other proposals from Liberal Rep. Juan Carlos having already passed in the first committee last month. That lawmaker recently sent a letter seeking for the support of his bill from President Gustavo Petro, a progressive who has strongly criticized the failures of the drug war and called on global leaders to fundamentally rethink drug policy. Seems like a no-brainer. But as of yet, the president hasn't endorsed any of the specific cannabis reform bills, even though he has vocally criticized the overall prohibitionist approach to the war on drugs. Petro told members of the United Nations last month that democracy will die if global powers don't unite and end prohibition and adopt a different approach with millions of lives on the line under the current regime. The president said that in a separate interview last month that the U.S. and other countries will enable a genocide of avoidable overdose deaths if leaders maintain the status quo of criminalization on cannabis. Petro also recently talked about the prospects of legalizing marijuana in Colombia as the means of reducing the influence of other illicit drugs on the market. And he signaled that the policy change should be followed by releasing people who are currently in prison for cannabis. Holy shit. What a thought. He spoke about economic potential of a legal cannabis industry where small towns in places like the Andes and Mardia could stand to benefit from legal marijuana cultivation, possibly without any licensing requirements. Senator Gustavo Bolivar introduced the measure in July, and he said that the reform is within reach now, and the country's Congress has liberal majority of lawmakers who fit within the political coalition known as the Historic Pact. He said that it's necessary because the extraordinary threat posed by illicit drug trafficking to the national security of this country, and because Colombia has an appropriate procedures in place to protect against innocent loss of life in the air and on the ground in connection with such interactions, which includes effective means to identify and warn aircraft before the use of force is directed against the aircraft. So I'm super interested to see how things shake out in Colombia. One thing I will say is Colombia is epically good at international trade and epically good at getting things around the country in an expeditious fashion. So when we started to talk about the idea of a global push on that and cannabis being something that we reform as far as the UN is concerned and in the way of classification, I think Colombia is one of the few places that potentially could eat California's lunch. And I'm excited to see how this pans out, and I want to hear what everyone else has to say. So I'm Nicole West, getting high at 9 with y'all.
Nicole, are you saying this because of Colombia's expertise in shipping coffee beans and cocaine around the world?
Yes, absolutely. And yes. And processing into coffee beans and cocaine from
that is a process.
Product.
It's a serious process.
Right. You roasting. I mean, there's a lot of different things: the drying, the roasting, the curing, the manufacture. I mean, they literally have been mastering 2 of our, world's most circulated psychotropics. And I don't know what the number is, but what percentage of quality cocaine do you think probably comes out of Colombia? And when we consider how much of it exists in the world, they're doing pretty good at production, if I must say.
Yeah,
Well,
I big shout out to Colombia, man. I'm actually looking at Colombia, Panama, my people's native land of Panama, and Costa Rica, places to move within the next 2 years and become an expat because they are Black people friendly, they are cannabis friendly, and you know what? We don't have to deal with a lot of the shit that we have to deal with here because of reefer madness.
Can we get the
So you're quitting. So you're quitting. You're a quitter on America, huh, Rico?
No, I'm not a quitter, man.
He's
what it
just gonna
sounds
take
like.
a break, you know?
Oh, is that because
I
he's
can
on the
have dual
injured reserve
citizenship, bro.
list?
Yeah,
I
dual.
Can't
Yeah,
play.
you
Can't
know
play.
what? You know what? They have universal health care. And I don't have to worry about, cycling and going back and forth with my doctor either, because
You don't have to worry
You
about
can go get
backpedaling.
you
Republicans
could go
still
get
want to
stem
line
cell
the
treatment.
pockets of big fucking insurance.
You can get stem cell treatment with your health insurance in Colombia.
Hell yeah, I can come back bigger, stronger than ever, bro.
Yeah. He's gonna come back 2 Ricos.
Yes.
He's gonna come back all bricked up, Rico.
Shout out to Colombia. You have anything to say about that, Gretchen? Were you going to comment on Colombia?
Just Colombia is the largest exporter of flowers in the world. They know how to grow shit.
They do. They roses, right? They do roses too. Yeah. So they move. Flower market movement has to happen so fucking fast. It's insane because the moment you cut that shit, it's decaying, right? So when you're getting roses from Colombia, imagine how good they had to be at logistics for you to get roses from Colombia in like Canada, which happens.
And I will say the most impressive grow and cultivation facility I ever saw was in Colombia. Nothing in the U.S. can beat what I've seen in Colombia.
Quit your hating, Jason. Quit your hating, Jason.
I'm not hating. I'm just a realist. You know what I mean?
think Colombia is one of the few places that if we do go international, really could be epically competitive against our state of California. California crushes and we do great. But I think if I was to pick a place that could eat our fucking lunch, and it's because California doesn't understand logistics the way Colombia does to move things in a proper manner. And almost every industry in Colombia would take it on immediately.
Well, El Guapo is 100% correct. The cost of growing in Colombia will destroy any market in the U.S.
Yep.
It will. It will
100%.
because America, we have way too high labor costs because of unions.
Bro, because human beings want to have fucking human rights.
It's because of
Let's pay Jason Beck $11 an hour to live in fucking West Hollywood. Let's go to a commercial, bro. Shut the fuck up.
Oh yeah. Welcome to Los Ashes, the headiest city in America. Los Ashes is a 10-pound smokable city curated and created by the world-renowned roller Weavers. In the past, Weavers has amazed cannabis lovers with his roll jobs, such as a smokable 5-pound rocket launcher and a 10-pound Darth Vader. But now Weavers is rolling an entire city. Have your business featured in Los Ashes with a ton of different sponsorship opportunities available. Contact Weavers at smokablecity.com for more sponsorship information.
The thoughts and opinions and general shade thrown on the High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers, not those of any other speaker or its followers. The statements made do not constitute legal or accounting advice, and our speakers bring no representation regarding the legal status of any substance in any country, area, territory, or its authorities. The views expressed in this room do not establish fiduciary relationships. Our sponsors do not imply or constitute any endorsement by us or the expression any opinion whatsoever anyone on stage. If you're an easily offended person, the show's probably not for you. Also, fuck off.
Oh, yeah. Flying into LAX and you want to taste some of the best weed in the world? Then stop by LAXCC, the closest dispensary to LAX. Located at 8332 Lincoln Boulevard and open from 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. 7 days a week. Always make LAXCC your first stop when you touch down in LA and score like a winner. And don't forget to tell them I sent you and mention you'd like to get High at 9 for 10% off your full order.
Our next correspondent is the CMO of industry-focused event ticketing and promotion platform Event High, but also the co-host and founder of the groundbreaking professional women in cannabis networking series, Blunt Brunch. Coming to the stage next, my good friend and California expat, Adelia Carrillo. What you got for us today?
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. All right, today's article is Ohio medical marijuana patients still unhappy with prices, though Michigan's cannabis market may influence their expectations. So a new Ohio State University study found that the first time a majority of patients are actually satisfied with Ohio's medical marijuana program, except for the pricing. Now, the pricing is still a huge drawback for patients, saying they believe it still costs too much for medical marijuana in Ohio. The article also states the reason they are not happy is that many think that their they're comparing their pricing to Michigan's cannabis prices, which actually dropped 17% within the past year. And for those that are unfamiliar with the Ohio market, what many think the reason for this big drop is because the state does not cap the number of licenses, while Ohio has license caps. Now, the annual report of the Ohio Medical Marijuana Control Program was produced by OSU's Moritz College of Law, Drug Enforcement, and Policy Center. It is the center's 4th annual report. And one of the data points says that it's about, or not data points, but about 2,500 people responded this year to this online survey between April 11th and May 31st, which people access through their Ohio Board and Pharmacy's monthly newsletter. Now, for those that are unfamiliar with the Ohio market, Ohio's first medical dispensary actually opened in January 2019. And in nearly 4 years, the patients have had access to legal medical marijuana. Ohio governments have collected over $132 million in revenue and $64 million in state and local sales taxes. They've also had $46 million in marijuana business application and licensing fees and $22 million in patient and caregiver fees, according to the report. Now, within this article, it also shares additional data points from the survey, such as the number of patients with active marijuana registrations grew by more than 44% over the past 12 years. And although the patients' numbers continue to quickly increase, they are seeing a drop in the number of physicians with a certificate to being able to recommend medical marijuana. The report didn't explain why there are fewer doctors, but it has dropped from 2021 and 2022 from 651 to 641. The survey also found that 56.1% of respondents were extremely or somewhat satisfied with the current state of medical marijuana program. Now, they did speak to a lady named Jana Herdova, the administrative director of the Drug Enforcement and Policy Center, and she said that the survey didn't ask people why they are more satisfied, but it's likely come down to 3 reasons: lower prices, more familiarity with navigating the program, and policy changes made during the COVID-19 pandemic, which it made it more convenient to patients, such as allowing doctors to conduct remote appointments and curbside pickup. She also states, "I know people continue to complain about high prices of cannabis, and they are right, they are high. I think that's partially because no insurance covers any expense connected with it, so I think that's why they consider it really high. But the prices have gone down pretty significantly." Now, a couple other things. The report also shows the price of the gram of medical marijuana in Ohio costs $8.99 in July, which is down from nearly $17 per gram in February 2019, shortly after the program began. So medical marijuana is cheaper. It is also cheaper than Pennsylvania, and it's more than twice as expensive as medical marijuana in Michigan. The article also states at the most recent Michigan Cannabis Regulatory Agency meeting, regulators asked industry insiders to talk about whether cannabis supply has exceeded demand. Now I'm going to jump a little bit just because the business owners at the meeting represented small cultivation companies and said they want a moratorium, at least temporarily, on new licenses. They said large multi-state growers are driving down prices. Michigan's marijuana regulators haven't made any final decisions yet about this moratorium. And then it jumps into the Ohio Board of Pharmacy on May 16th, did announce 70 new provisional dispensary licenses across the state after a study showed many Ohioans, if I'm saying that correctly,
that's correct,
from their homes to far more. They're traveling far more from their homes to get to a dispensary. When the dispensaries open for business, there will be over 130 dispensaries in the state. So with that being said, I would love to hear from our correspondents or those in the audience. Does anyone have more insight into the Ohio market? What are your thoughts on the Ohio market as a whole?
I guess I got some thoughts on it.
Go ahead, Roz. Go for this.
Well, only reason why, because Black Buddha is actually in the Ohio market. Well, being released
Where'd you go, Roz?
In Ohio, looking at it from. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can. Yeah, go ahead.
All right. Sorry about that. Yeah, so I've been studying the Ohio market, and I will tell you one thing that I'm concerned about is that there's still a limitation on product options for patients in Ohio. So literally, you can't have any type of pre-roll product, any combustible product is a no-go in Ohio. And we all know that when it comes to a patient, if they can't afford in buying an eighth, or if they can't afford.
Raj, you keep cutting out on us.
We lost. Yeah, we lost her.
We lost you, Roz.
I have an opinion about Ohio personally. I've worked on a couple projects recently. The way that they sell tenths of an ounce, I think one is very confusing for a lot of people who are used to buying weed and an eighth. They sell your package is a 2.83 per package instead of a 3.5 gram eighth, but that is like a limitation that they have specifically on packaging. And also, it is one of the most strict states I've interacted with in regards to packaging and label compliance. So they've been like, epically restrictive on literally I've had things kicked back because they say it looks too adult use or it looks too recreational. They'll kick packaging back and like things have to go through an extra process in Ohio that I feel like a lot of other states don't have. And then in Michigan, the Michigan medical market, this is the craziest shit. Okay, so I went to jail for what was a practice called looping. The state said that according to their interpretation of the law that 1 ounce per transaction meant per day. So I was consulting for a client in Michigan and I was like, guys, per day, I swear to God. And they're like, no, it says per transaction. I was like, guys, like, here's my story. Here's my jail sentence. Like, I swear to God, like, just listen to me. So we got an inspector in and the inspector, the owner was like, hey, am I right or is she right? And I had a fucking $1,000. It's one bet I'm really embarrassed that I lost, but okay. The inspector looked at us and they're like, we don't care. We don't care how many times. And I was just like, wait, what? So the medical market in Michigan is so lackadaisical about everything that I can understand that it's being abused. Whereas the Ohio market, you can't even get a fucking package through without somebody saying like, oh, that looks too adult use. I mean, it's apples to oranges. Like obviously people are going to drive right across the fucking border and just walk in and you can buy, adult use for almost the same price as the medical in Michigan as well, because there's so much available.
I agree with you on that, Nicole. No one wants to buy a tenth of weed. That's just stupid.
Well, and I think it's confusing for people. They don't understand it. They think they're getting a good deal at first.
Most people don't know fractions. They can barely add and subtract, let alone do fractions.
Yeah, but they buy 2.8 grams, which is, 3.5 is dumb too, but 2.8 is pretty.
I blame John Boehner and Nick Lachey.
98 degrees?
No,
I know why you're saying this.
He tried to game the market.
In the Ohio market.
Yeah, he tried to game the fucking market.
Okay.
They did
licenses early.
I was like, what does 98 degrees have to do with it?
Pay off for fucking politicians.
We do have a comment from Steven from the audience in Clubhouse. Steven, what do you have to say on this? 20 seconds or less.
Wouldn't that be what they used to call a hate on the hate Nashberry? Freaking
a hate.
You're like, fuck you. We don't like you.
Insight on that.
Hey, in all fairness, Steven, I know back in the day, I pioneered what I called the 50 sack, and I used to sell 2.5 grams for $50. And if you wanted an eighth, it was $60. And so I would tell people, do you want an eighth or do you want a 50 sack? And because they're two different things.
What is the better deal, Jason? Or they just start doing
the eighth was definitely the better deal.
Way better, yeah.
But nonetheless, everyone always wanted the 50 sack.
More money in your pockets. This is why I used to sell.
Capitalism at its finest, my friend.
Dubs all day long. Back in Chicago, you want an eighth? It's $90 fucking bucks. Find it for somebody else if you can.
Exactly. And not to mention too, it was only certain weed that I would sell in Ace. Other weeds I would tell you is only available in 50 sacks.
Yesterday's prices are not today's prices.
That's right.
You got the next one, Jason? Keep this party going.
Oh yeah. I'm terribly sorry.
I blame Cupcake.
I can blame Cupcake too. You want me to run it, Jason?
Nope, I have it right here. Cupcake had to pull it up. She's a Florida-based entrepreneurial boss lady leading the charge for the ultimate cannabis lifestyle brand, Black Buddha Cannabis. Also the founder and CEO of Minorities for Medical Marijuana. Coming next to the stage is none other than the Roz McCarthy.
Good morning, America, and good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Jason, for bringing me in.
We hear
all right,
you.
my story. Yeah, you hear me? Great. So
Okay.
My story is coming from Marijuana Moment, Kyle Yeager, and it's something kind of near and dear to my heart because we've been working on veteran issues in cannabis for a while now. The title says, as Canada reimburses medical marijuana for military veterans, the U.S. keeps failing those who served. And so For a nation that puts its military veterans in such a high esteem and notionally spends hundreds of billions of dollars on caring for them, the failures of the U.S. government to even marginally reduce suicide or overdose among veterans stands as a stark reminder that more can and should be done. Let me make sure I preface this article by letting you know this is an op-ed, so that you guys can get a framework of how this is being presented. In the last 20 years, that we have been working together as allies in Afghanistan and elsewhere, Canada has gone from federally allowing for the medical use of cannabis to legalizing it for all adults. For more than 10 years, they have been reimbursing veterans for cannabis for medical purposes, starting with 37 clients in 2011 and expanding to more than 18,000 in 2021. Canadian veterans, unlike their U.S. peers, are seeing dropping rates of suicide. There is no question that veterans of the U.S. Armed Forces are using cannabis. To what extent, it is hard to say. Surveys by veterans, service organizations, and government data, like the National Survey on Drug Use and Health, make it difficult in determining use patterns because of their limitations in precision and scope. At this point, however, more than half of the country's 18 million veterans live in states that have legalized cannabis for adult use. When you consider that all but a small number have passed laws that acknowledge its therapeutic value, the vast majority of veterans have more access to state legal cannabis than ever before. In the midst of progress, the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, the first introduction of the Veterans Equal Access Act by Congressman Blumenauer in 2014, the VA, under 3 presidents and 4 secretaries, has opposed every cannabis-related reform aimed at the department. That includes falsely stating in 2018 letter from VA Secretary David Shulkin to the House Committee on Veterans Affairs that the VA could not even conduct research on cannabis. Over the last 8 years, hundreds of representatives and senators have sponsored and co-sponsored bills. Bills like codifying a Veteran Health Administration directive protecting veterans who disclose cannabis use. A bill like allowing VA physicians to fill out paperwork to allow veterans to access state medical marijuana programs. A bill like conducting mandated research investigating medical applications of cannabis. A bill like creating a safe harbor for veterans to possess cannabis on VA property. The budget for the VA was $40 billion in 2001. The most recent budget request was for 2023 was $300 billion. That's almost 7 times multiple of what was in 2001. In that same time period, which includes 3.5 million Americans deployed to Iraq and Afghanistan, and 7,052 direct war deaths, more than 127,000 veterans have died by suicide. In fact, there are more suicides in 2020 than when the VA started collecting data in 2001, despite the veteran population dropping by 5 million people over that time span. Veteran suicide prevention, by all accounts to the public, is the VA's top clinical priority. However, in turn, veterans have grown increasingly vocal about sharing their lived experiences of using cannabis, THC, CBD, and other cannabinoids as a tool to dramatically reduce their suicide risk by substituting cannabis for more harmful and less effective substances. Cannabis for some veterans offers effects like pain management, sleep enhancement, reduced anxiety and depression. In comparison to the cocktails of opioids, sleeping pills, antidepressants, antipsychotics, they are regularly prescribed by the VA and private physicians. Cannabis delivers far better results at a fraction of the mental and physical costs. Let me go a little bit further down going into this. A recent audit of the Veterans Affairs Canada program shows that in 2021, they reimbursed $150 million to more than 18,000 veterans. A skeptical write-up points out that the VAC reimbursement of cannabis amounted to spending more than on all other prescriptions combined. So what? Who cares if it's more? In the U.S., meanwhile, the VA spent more than $9 billion on pharmacy services in 2022, which accounted for more than 300 million 30-day scripts. In 2019, California enacted the Dennis Perone and Brown-Mary Act, naming 2 of the pioneering advocates who led the first successful state campaign to make cannabis for medical purpose legal. That law created another world first, a legal pathway for the licensed cannabis industry to donate their products to eligible patients at no cost. Between Canada and California, a new approach begins to emerge.
consider the comparable size of the respective populations and scale of legal cannabis, now realize that in Canada, licensed producers destroyed more than 800 million grams of unsold dry cannabis between the year 2018 and 2021. I'll just wrap up this story by saying that it is just, when you read this, and I want everyone who can pull this from Clubhouse, if you can pull this article, go share this. Just the numbers itself, the travesty, how we talk about wanting to serve our veterans and support them, and the fact that our politicians turn a blind eye to cannabis, CBD, cannabinoids as another option to serve and to make sure that they're in a better place from a healing perspective, it's just sad. I'm Roz McCarthy, signing off for I'm sorry.
It's all right, Roz. You're on the East Coast. It's high noon on the East Coast, but it's high at 9
It's high noon on the new. Yes. I would love my colleagues, anyone from the audience, if you're a veteran, if you want to, speak up and say something, but would love to hear your thoughts on this.
Roz, your headline literally just rings so loud to me in regards to like the work that's being done by the Weed for Warriors here in California. The efforts that they've been making to try to make sure that the access is available, and that people are doing that. Where the amount of free product that's going out of just like Jason's store alone every month with the Weed for Warriors to help veterans right now is amazing, but it's still not enough, right? Like every store in the fucking state should be offering a program with, it doesn't have to be the Weed for Warriors, a group offering for the veterans to get access to cannabis, easier, more available access to cannabis. They're utilizing this in lieu of all of these fucking pain meds and anti-anxiety meds. And, if we could help, the more we can help with that, the better. But the fact that we're just like, I don't know what the number is of like wasted product, here in California, but I'm sure it's pretty fucking substantial as well. That could have been helping people. And
Jason just talked about what Jason just talked about in the earlier story about the, just the potency of it after 4 months, 6 months on the shelf, 12 months on the shelf. And it's just a shame that California is the only state,
right,
if I'm not mistaken, maybe there's another state that has a program that is, that's focused on, we can make a claim for people that can't afford it, like literally who can't afford cannabis, that needs it from a medical perspective. Yep. And it's just, but this is just a shame.
Big ups to Oz. Big ups to Cannabis Works out in OC. Shelly doing the damn thing out there. My peoples and everybody else doing that. And it might be unpopular, but I am all for shaming a bunch of the industry that's not doing this shit.
Right. Like where's your free shit? Hey, you know what I want to start doing? What I need some lawyers to help me with this. I want to go through all the applications of all these big MSOs and look at what their fucking community program was and what they promised the community they would do if they got their license.
Exactly.
And just sounds
like a class action lawsuit waiting to
hold
happen.
Them to the fire. Be like, where's my park? You said you were going to give me a park.
Real talk.
That is a grading. That's a grading system. Absolutely. Like in the state of Florida, there is a piece in the Florida legislation for the medical program that says that you have to do X amount of work from a diversity perspective in the veteran and minority community. And and right now, if you call Department of Health and ask them, is this being done? They will go, I don't know. And it is it burns my chaps that
we should start like some sort of campaign to be like, prove it.
Hold up, Rob, what was that you said? It burns your chaps?
Chaps my hide, burns my chaps.
I love that. Is that
it burns
me. Yeah, chaps.
It burns to no other to know that, that we have no kind of way of having a check and balance. You put policy in place and you have, and we count on folks to like hold folks accountable to it. If you're going to win a license and that's a part of your application, then hold them accountable.
All right. What lawyer wants to help me do this? I'll do the legwork. I'll do the research. Right. What lawyer wants to help me?
Oh, don't worry. I'll find you a lawyer. That's the easy part of this.
Yeah, public shaming helps, especially in this day and age of social media. So like if your favorite dispensary is not giving back to those who need it the most, yet they claim to be like, oh yeah, help the troops, oh save the troops, oh yeah, we support the troops, like make them prove it and put them on blast if they're not. I'm all for that. So I know we got to keep it moving. Go ahead, please.
Any dispensary out there needs help finding a program, Weed for Warriors, and then also the Sweet Leaf Collective. There you go, boom.
Let's do it.
California, we just helped you out.
California. All right, let's keep on rolling. All right, so she is co-founder of Camilla Canagram, the women's cannabis competition, and head of brand relations at Concepcion Nurseries. A crusader for female cannabis that loves showing the world weed, motherhood, and executive lifestyle that comes with being an industry boss do indeed go together, despite what prohibitionists and the lamestream media just might tell you. Coming to the stage next, bringing us home today, it's Mandy Tingler.
Saw what you did there, Rico.
And the crowd goes wild. No, hey guys. Okay, thank you. I really appreciate getting to be the cleanup hitter on the show. And today's article is entitled, Reform Groups Say Bipartisan Marijuana Research Bill Could Cause Dire Unintended Consequences for Industry. And this is coming to you from Marijuana Moment, my friends. All right, marijuana and drug policy reform groups are sounding the alarm about a bipartisan cannabis research bill that they say could inadvertently undermine state marijuana programs and patient access. In a letter to Senate State Majority Leader Chuck Schumer on Tuesday, the Global Alliance for Cannabis Commerce and Law Enforcement Action Partnership said they support streamlining marijuana research, but the House passed bill that's now pending a final vote in the Senate would create more problems than it would solve. Specifically, the organizations are arguing that the Medical Marijuana and Cannabidiol Research Expansion Act does not expand research into existing cannabis medicines and only permits research for the purpose of pharmaceutical new drug application by large pharmaceutical companies. Current law already allows cannabis to be researched as a potential pharmaceutical, the letter says, pointing out that there are 2 marijuana-based Food and Drug Administration approved drugs on the market, Syndros and Epidiolex. The legislation therefore aims to, quote, solve a problem that simply does not exist. The act fails to address the real issue, the letter says. The barriers to research exist in obtaining existing market products for approval in non-drug pathways such as dietary supplements, food additives, and other FDCA pathways. In obtaining existing products for health and safety testing across state lines to ensure consistency of products, in using human subjects in testing highway safety, motor skill, and other studies to determine more exactly intoxicating levels and effects. These flaws cause the act to have substantial and dire unintended consequences for the existing medical cannabis, industrial hemp, and dietary supplement industries. By disallowing existing product manufacturers from researching dietary supplement or other FDCA pathway use, Congress would only increase the ease of which the large pharmaceutical interests can file preclusive drug patents over existing products akin to generics or dietary supplements that are state regulated and available nationwide. As fortune would have it for these groups, Senate consideration of this bill was delayed last week following an objection to a unanimous consent vote that was raised by Senator John Cornyn, Republican in Texas. But the GACC and the LEAP are asking for the vote to be postponed indefinitely. Besides potentially upending existing state cannabis markets, the legislation could substantially undermine the regulatory, social equity, agricultural, labor, and small business regimes in each state that are set up to promote public health, safety, and minority entrepreneurship, the letter argues. Finally, the outcome would result in the diversion of pain management patients looking for medical cannabis, using medical cannabis back into opioid-based treatments and related mortalities, it continues. Additionally, the Title III unnecessarily complicates and narrows the existing long-standing interpretations of criminal law and doctor-patient relationship under the First Amendment and Controlled Substance Act, and potentially interferes with a 20-year-old nationwide injunction addressing the issue. Doctors and medical professionals may currently discuss the benefits and risks of marijuana with their patients, free from fear of criminal prosecution under the Controlled Substance Act, concurrent with the First Amendment. That discussion is governed by a state medical practice law and tort, not the Controlled Substance Act. If the legislation is enacted into law, that opens the door to prosecution of large swaths of First Amendment protected activity under an expansive novel interpretation of the Controlled Substance Act criminal reach, the group said. They reiterated they're not opposed to promoting marijuana research and have supported previous, more expansive proposals. But while sponsors might have had the right intentions, GACC and LEAP said the measure would work substantially to harm cannabis research reform. Republican Earl Blumenauer from Oregon and Andy Harris, Republican out of Maryland, sponsored the measure in the House, which is substantially identical to the separate Senate bill from Senator Dianne Feinstein of California and Brian Schatz of Hawaii and Chuck Grassley of, I don't even know, I think that's Iowa, that precariously cleared the chamber. Just last week, researchers and other advocates associated with the prohibitionist organization Smart Approaches to Marijuana, or SAM, sent a different letter to Schumer imploring him to bring the research measure to a vote. Under the legislation, the U.S. Attorney General would be given a 60-day deadline to either approve a given application or request supplemental information from the marijuana research applicant. It would also create a more efficient pathway for researchers who request larger quantities of cannabis. Further, the bill would encourage the Food and Drug Administration to help develop cannabis-derived medicines. One way it proposed doing so is by allowing accredited medical and osteopathic schools, practitioners, research institutions, and manufacturers with a Schedule I registration to cultivate their own cannabis research for purposes. The DEA would get a mandate to approve applications to be manufacturers of marijuana-derived FDA-approved drugs under the bill. Manufacturers would also be allowed to import cannabis materials to facilitate research into the plant's therapeutic potential. This goes on and on, guys, but basically at the end of the day, we have to be very careful about what legislation is being proposed on a national or even local levels with regards to cannabis and making sure that it's not excluding anything in our regular marketplace. This one is really important for us to pay close attention to because, as we know, the massive amounts of research that need to be done for this plant have a long road ahead of them. And frankly, this is one that everybody should be paying close attention to. I see a lot of slippery slope in this one. And this is Mandy reporting for the High at 9 News.
Thank you for covering this, Mandy. Do you think that John Cornyn is going to be a hero in the end for blocking this shit?
Are you guys, can you hear me? Hello?
Yeah, we hear you.
Okay.
We thank you so much for that headline, Mandy. That story is very interesting, but we are unfortunately at time, so we're going to go ahead and hop. Thank you all for joining us today and everyone for getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Make sure to like, subscribe, and share all of our social media. Make sure you check us out on YouTube. Big shout out to our audience and supporters, to the haters for still talking about us. Huge thank you to True Classic, Weavers, and LAXCC for helping us keep the lights on. And thank you to the correspondents for being amazing, and Cannabis for giving us a reason to do this, and 3 is 4 for helping us create a space in this amazing cannabis miniverse. Thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us.
You are tuned in to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebs and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and enthogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your hosts, Jason Beck, Rico Lamitte, and Nicole West, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country and daily antics brought to you by Cannabis. Coming to you live Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific Time. Thank you for getting high at 9 with us.